The morning shift alarm buzzed through the lower levels of Nexus Prime, and Hyunwoo Park rolled out of his narrow bunk with a grunt. His back ached from yesterday's work crawling through maintenance tunnels, but the massive trading station never stopped needing repairs. Somewhere in the walls around him, thousands of beings from dozens of worlds were waking up to another day of commerce and trade. Hyunwoo pulled on his work coveralls and grabbed his tool belt. The fabric was stained with oils from 100 different machines, and the belt held tools that could fix almost anything. He had been working on Nexus Prime for 8 years now, ever since he left Earth looking for something more interesting than fixing farming equipment on the colonies. He found it here among the aliens. The main corridor hummed with activity as he made his way to the engineering section. A group of tall blue Vorthan traders glided past, their crystalline voices discussing some deal involving rare metals. 2 stocky Keldon warriors stood guard outside a cargo bay, their gray skin marked with ritual scars that showed their rank. A cluster of small furry Nexari merchants chittered excitedly over handheld computers, probably calculating profits. Hyunwoo nodded to them all as he passed. After 8 years, most of the regular traders knew him by sight. The human mechanic who could fix anything and never asked too many questions about what was being shipped where. The engineering bay was located deep in the station's core, where the main power generators and life support systems hummed constantly. Chief Engineer Bongsu Nam looked up from a diagnostic panel as Hyunwoo entered. "Morning, Hyunwoo," Bongsu said in Korean. It felt good to hear his native language. "We have a problem with the atmospheric recyclers on level 7. The Keldon delegation is complaining about the air quality. Their noses are too sensitive," Hyunwoo replied, checking the duty roster. "I will look at it after I finish the routine checks." The work was familiar and comforting. "Check the power coupling on level 3. Replace worn seals in the water purification system. Calibrate the gravity generators that kept everyone's feet on the floor. Simple problems with simple solutions." Hyunwoo was elbow deep in a malfunctioning ventilation unit when the first alarm sounded. It was not the usual maintenance alert or the weekly drill signal. This was the emergency klaxon that meant something serious was happening. Hyunwoo wiped his hands on a rag and looked around. The other engineers had stopped working too. "All personnel report to stations," came the announcement from Captain Dong-min Kim. "We have an unidentified vessel approaching the station. This is not a drill." Hyunwoo climbed out of the access tunnel and made his way to the nearest observation deck. Through the thick, transparent aluminum windows, he could see the vast darkness of space dotted with stars. Ships came and went from Nexus Prime constantly, but something felt different about this. Then he saw it. The ship that appeared from the darkness was like nothing Hyunwoo had ever seen. It was not the sleek metal of human vessels, or the organic curves of Vorthan ships, or the angular blocks of Keldon warcraft. This thing looked alive. Its hull seemed to pulse with a dark energy that made his eyes water when he looked directly at it. Ancient symbols covered its surface, twisting and turning in patterns that hurt to follow. The ship was massive, easily half the size of a city block, but it moved through space with an eerie silence. No engine flare, no communication signals, no response to the station's hails. "What is that thing?" whispered Dr. So-Young Lee, the station's chief xenobiologist. She had appeared beside him at the window, her face pale as she stared at the approaching vessel. "I have never seen anything like it," Hyunwoo said. "The databases show no matching design." Other beings had gathered at observation points throughout the station. Hyunwoo could hear worried chittering from the Nexari, low growls from the Keldon, and the musical tones the Vorthan made when they were nervous. Everyone seemed to sense that something was wrong. The strange ship continued its approach, ignoring all attempts at communication from the station's control center. It moved with purpose, as if it knew exactly where it was going and what it intended to do when it got there. Captain Kim's voice came over the intercom again. "All non-essential personnel report to designated safe areas. Security teams to battle stations. This is a Code Orange alert." Code Orange meant possible hostile contact. Hyunwoo had never heard it used in his 8 years on the station. Nexus Prime was neutral territory, protected by treaties signed by every major power in the galaxy. Nobody attacked trading stations, but this ship did not seem to care about treaties. As it drew closer, Hyunwoo began to notice something odd about the reactions of the other beings around him. The chittering of the Nexari had become high-pitched and frantic. The Vorthan were backing away from the windows, their crystalline faces showing something that looked like terror. Even the tough Keldon warriors seemed nervous. "Dr. Lee," Hyunwoo said. Are you feeling all right? She turned to look at him, and her face was white with fear. Can you not feel it? She whispered. That presence. It is like ice in my mind. Hyunwoo frowned and concentrated, but he felt nothing unusual. The ship looked strange and unsettling, but it did not fill him with the kind of terror he saw in the alien faces around him. The ship was close enough now that he could make out more details of its surface. What he had taken for symbols were actually moving, shifting across the hull like living tattoos. Parts of the ship seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in a slow rhythm that reminded him of a sleeping giant. Then, without warning, it began to transmit. It was not a radio signal or any kind of communication Hyunwoo recognized. It was something else. Something that seemed to reach directly into the minds of every being on the station. The effect on the aliens was immediate and devastating. Dr. Lee collapsed to her knees, clutching her head and making small whimpering sounds. The Nexari began running in panic, their small forms scurrying for the exits. The Vorthans simply froze where they stood, their crystalline bodies vibrating with what looked like terror. Throughout the station, Hyunwoo could hear the sounds of chaos beginning. Screams, running feet, the crash of things being knocked over by panicked beings. Only the humans seemed unaffected by whatever the ship was broadcasting. Emergency medical teams to all levels, came the announcement. We have multiple beings experiencing severe psychological distress. The strange ship had reached the station's docking perimeter and was extending some kind of docking apparatus. It was not asking for permission. It was not following standard procedures. It was simply taking what it wanted. And something told Hyunwoo that whatever was aboard that ancient vessel was about to change everything. He looked around at the chaos spreading through the observation deck. Alien beings who had been calm and rational minutes before were now reduced to gibbering terror by simply being near this thing. But the humans remained standing. They remained thinking. Why were they different? What made them immune to whatever was affecting every other species in the galaxy? Hyunwoo had a feeling he was about to find out, and he was not sure he was ready for the answer. The docking clamp sealed with a sound that echoed through the entire station. Hyunwoo felt the vibration through the floor as the ancient ship locked itself to Nexus Prime's hull. Around him, the chaos was getting worse by the minute. Dr. So-Young Lee was still on her knees, rocking back and forth with her hands pressed against her temples. Her breathing was fast and shallow, like someone having a panic attack. But when Hyunwoo knelt beside her and touched her shoulder, she jerked away from him as if he had burned her. The darkness, she whispered. It knows we are here. It has been looking for us for so long. Doctor, you need to calm down, Hyunwoo said gently. What darkness? What is looking for us? But she could not answer. Her eyes were wide and staring at something he could not see. Other humans were moving through the observation deck now, helping the affected aliens and trying to restore some kind of order. But every non-human on the station seemed to be experiencing the same thing. Captain Dongmin Kim's voice came over the intercom, but it was strained and urgent. All human personnel report to emergency stations immediately. We have a situation developing throughout the station. Alien crew members are experiencing severe psychological effects. Repeat, all humans to emergency stations. Hyunwoo helped Dr. Lee to a nearby bench where other humans were caring for affected aliens. The Nexari merchants were huddled together in a corner, making high-pitched crying sounds that hurt to hear. The proud Keldan warriors sat slumped against the walls, their gray faces turned pale with terror. I need to get to engineering, Hyunwoo told Ji Hoon-kwan, one of the security officers who had arrived to help manage the situation. If something happens to the main systems now, we are all in trouble. Ji-hoon nodded grimly. Be careful down there. We do not know what that thing wants or what it is capable of. The corridors of Nexus Prime had become a nightmare. Beings who had lived and worked together peacefully for years were now running in blind panic or collapsed in corners, lost in whatever visions the ancient ship was forcing into their minds. Only humans moved with purpose through the chaos, helping where they could and trying to keep critical systems running. In the engineering section, the situation was just as bad. Hyunwoo's alien colleagues were either gone or incapacitated. Veltar, a Vortan engineer he had worked with for 3 years, was pressed against a wall making crystalline sounds of distress. Grok, a massive Keldan who normally feared nothing, was curled up in a ball under a workstation. Bongsu Nam was trying to monitor all the station's systems by himself, his hands flying over multiple control panels at once. He looked up when Hyunwoo entered, relief obvious on his face. "Thank goodness you are here," Bongsu said. "Half our staff is down and the other half ran away. Something is happening to the main computer core. The diagnostic systems are showing readings I have never seen before." Hyunwoo moved to his station and began checking the displays. The numbers were indeed strange. Power fluctuations throughout the station, but not the kind caused by mechanical failures. These looked almost organic, like the station itself was developing a heartbeat. "Sir?" came a voice from the communication system. It was Tae Hyun-oh, one of the human security captains. "We have visual contact with the entity that came off the ship." "Put it on screen," Bongsu ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a security camera view of Corridor 7, Deck 12. For a moment, Hyunwoo thought the camera was malfunctioning. Then he realized what he was seeing was real. The creature walking down the corridor was 12 feet tall and moved with a strange flowing motion that seemed to defy the station's gravity. It appeared to be part machine and part living tissue, with sections of metallic armor covering areas of what looked like ancient, scarred flesh. Multiple arms extended from its torso, some ending in hands, others in tools or weapons that Hyunwoo could not identify. But it was the creature's head that was most disturbing. It had too many eyes arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it turned to examine something, all the eyes moved independently like a collection of separate beings sharing one body. "What in the name of Earth is that thing?" Bongsu whispered. As they watched, the creature approached a group of Nexari who had been unable to flee. The small furry beings were pressed against the wall, trembling with terror. But the creature did not attack them. Instead, it seemed to study them for a moment, then moved on, leaving them unharmed but still paralyzed with fear. "It is not killing anyone," Hyunwoo observed. "Look at its movement pattern. It is searching for something." The creature continued down the corridor, ignoring the aliens it encountered. When it reached a sealed blast door, it placed one of its tool arms against the metal. The door simply dissolved, as if the creature's touch had turned solid steel into mist. Dr. Lee's voice suddenly came over the emergency communication channel, weak but clearer than before. "Engineering? Can anyone hear me?"
"I am in the medical bay."
I managed to access the archaeological databases. "That creature? I think I know what it is." "We hear you, Doctor," Bongsu replied. "What did you find?" "The symbols on its ship match fragments we have discovered on dead worlds throughout the galaxy. Ancient sites that predate any known civilization. The researchers called the builders the first makers. They were supposed to be a legend, a myth to explain why so many species developed similar technologies." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. "You are saying that thing is one of the first makers?" "Not exactly. The data suggests the first makers disappeared millions of years ago, but they left guardians behind. Watchers. Things that were meant to check on the species they had created and guided." On the screen, the creature had reached another intersection. It paused there, turning its multiple heads in different directions as if listening for something. Then it began moving again, heading toward the lower levels of the station. "It is coming this way," Tae-hyun's voice reported. "Whatever it is looking for, it thinks it might find it in the engineering section." Bongsu began typing commands rapidly. "I am sealing all the blast doors between here and the upper levels. That should buy us some time to evacuate." "No," Hyunwoo said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Think about what Dr. Lee just said. If that creature is some kind of guardian left behind by the first makers, then it has been doing this job for millions of years. It knows more about maintaining civilizations than we could learn in 1,000 lifetimes." "What are you suggesting?" Bongsu asked. "I am saying maybe it is not here to destroy anything. Maybe it is here to check on something, to see how we are doing. And if that is true, then running away might send the wrong message." On the screen, they could see the creature had reached the sealed blast doors leading to the engineering section. It paused for a moment, then placed its hand against the metal. Just like before, the door began to dissolve. "Hyunwoo, that thing is terrifying every alien on this station just by being here," Bongsu said. "Even if you are right about its intentions, we cannot just let it wander around. But what if the reason it is terrifying them is because they recognize it on some deep level? What if their species remember being created or guided by the first makers, and seeing one of their guardians brings back genetic memories of being judged?" The creature was through the door now, moving down the corridor toward engineering. In a few minutes it would be here with them. Hyunwoo looked around at his colleagues. The humans were nervous but functional. The aliens were paralyzed with terror. Only one species on this station was able to think clearly in the presence of this ancient guardian. "There is something else," he said quietly. "We are the only ones who are not affected by its presence. Every other species in the galaxy is experiencing primal terror just from being near it. But not us. What do you think that means?" Bong-su asked. Hyunwoo watched the security display as the creature drew closer. It moved with purpose, but also with something that looked almost like reverence for the machinery and systems it passed. "I think it means we are about to find out why humans are different from everyone else in the galaxy." The footsteps in the corridor outside were getting louder. The door to the engineering bay dissolved like sugar in water. Hyunwoo felt his heart hammering in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm as the ancient creature stepped through the opening. Up close, it was even more terrifying than on the security screens. The creature's multiple eyes swept the room, taking in every detail. When its gaze fell on the unconscious alien engineers huddled in corners, something that might have been sadness flickered across its features. But when those ancient eyes found Hyunwoo standing calmly at his workstation, the creature stopped moving entirely. For several long seconds, neither being moved. The creature seemed as surprised to find Hyunwoo conscious and functional as Hyunwoo was to be face-to-face with something from the dawn of galactic civilization. The air between them felt thick with tension and possibility. Then the creature did something unexpected. It began to emit the same signal that had terrified every alien on the station, but this time, it seemed to be focusing it directly at Hyunwoo. The human mechanic felt a cold pressure in his mind, like fingers of ice trying to reach into his thoughts and find something to grasp onto. But whatever the creature was looking for, it could not find it. Hyunwoo felt uncomfortable, like someone was staring at him too intensely, but he did not collapse in terror. He did not run screaming from the room. He simply stood there, wrench in hand, and waited to see what would happen next. The creature tilted its massive head, clearly puzzled by Hyunwoo's resistance to its mental influence. It made a sound that was part mechanical whir and part organic growl, but somehow Hyunwoo got the impression it was not threatening him. It was trying to communicate. "I do not understand your language," Hyunwoo said quietly, "but I am not going to hurt you, and I hope you are not going to hurt me." The creature's eyes focused on him with laser intensity. Then, to Hyunwoo's amazement, it stepped back and gestured with one of its tool arms toward the workstation where Hyunwoo had been repairing a power coupling. It wanted him to continue his work. Hyunwoo glanced toward the communication panel where he knew Bong-su and the others were watching from a safe location. Then he made a decision that would change everything. He turned back to his repair work and began explaining what he was doing. "This coupling connects the main power grid to the life support systems," he said, speaking clearly and calmly. "It gets worn down over time from constant use. If we do not replace the seals regularly, it will fail and people will die." The creature moved closer, its multiple arms extending to examine Hyunwoo's tools and methods. It made more of those strange sounds, and Hyunwoo began to realize they were not random noise. There was a pattern to them, a rhythm that reminded him of the technical manuals he had studied as a young engineer. "You understand machines," Hyunwoo said. It was not a question. The way the creature examined the power coupling showed knowledge that went far beyond simple curiosity. "You know what I'm doing here." One of the creature's tool arms extended a scanner that Hyunwoo had never seen before, but its purpose was obvious. It was analyzing the power coupling's molecular structure, checking for stress points and potential failures with technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything on Nexus Prime. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the engineering section. A critical system failure was developing in the station's main reactor core. If it was not fixed immediately, the resulting explosion would destroy half the station and kill thousands of beings. Hyunwoo dropped his current work and ran toward the reactor controls, his training taking over. The creature followed, its massive form moving with surprising grace through the narrow corridors. When they reached the reactor chamber, Hyunwoo could see the problem immediately. A cascade failure had started in the primary containment field. The safety systems were trying to compensate, but they were not strong enough. In less than 10 minutes, the reactor would go critical. "I need to get into the core chamber," Hyunwoo muttered, grabbing his emergency gear. The manual override is inside, but the radiation levels will be deadly. He started putting on his protective suit knowing it would not be enough. This was likely a suicide mission, but he could not let thousands of innocent beings die because of a mechanical failure. That was when the creature stepped forward. Without any apparent effort, it extended several of its arms into the reactor core, moving through the lethal radiation as if it was nothing more than sunlight. Its tools interfaced directly with the station's systems, but not in any way Hyunwoo had ever seen before. It was as if the creature was speaking directly to the machines, convincing them to work properly instead of simply repairing them. Within minutes, the cascade failure was stopped. The containment field stabilized. The reactor core returned to normal operation. The creature had saved the station and everyone on it. But more importantly, it had worked together with Hyunwoo to do it. As they stood together in the reactor chamber, both beings catching their breath after the crisis, Hyunwoo began to understand something profound. The creature had not come to Nexus Prime to destroy or conquer. It had come to evaluate, to test, to see what the younger races had become in the millions of years since the first makers had disappeared. And somehow, Hyunwoo had passed that test. The creature turned to face him, and for the first time, its multiple eyes seemed to focus on him with something that looked like approval. It made another series of sounds, but these were different from before. They were warmer, more complex, almost musical. "You're trying to tell me something important," Hyunwoo said. "Something about why you are here, about what you have been looking for." The creature nodded, a remarkably human gesture from such an alien being. Then it did something that made Hyunwoo's breath catch in his throat. It bowed. Not the bow of a servant to a master, but the respectful bow of one craftsman acknowledging another's skill. In that simple gesture, millions of years of galactic history seemed to shift and change. The ancient guardian had found what it was looking for. It had found humanity. From the communication panel, Bongsu's voice crackled with amazement. "Hyunwoo, are you seeing what we're seeing? That thing just bowed to you." "Yes," Hyunwoo replied, still staring at the creature in wonder. "I think it has been waiting a very long time to find someone who could work alongside it instead of running away in terror." The creature straightened up and began projecting images directly into the air around them. Star charts, technical diagrams, and what looked like historical records of countless civilizations. The story it was trying to tell was vast and complex, but one thing was becoming clear. Humanity was different from every other species in the galaxy. And that difference was exactly what this ancient guardian had been searching for. The real conversation was just beginning. The images floating in the air around Hyunwoo were like nothing he had ever seen. Star maps that showed the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, when different species ruled different regions, and the current interstellar government did not exist. Technical diagrams of machines so advanced they looked like magic. And most disturbing of all, what appeared to be memories of ancient civilizations rising and falling like waves on a beach. Dr. So-Young Lee's voice came through the communication system, stronger now but still shaky. "Hyunwoo, I'm analyzing the images from the security cameras. Those star charts match archaeological findings from 12 different worlds. This creature really is connected to the first makers." The creature seemed to understand that it was being discussed. It turned toward the communication panel and made a series of sounds that were somehow both mechanical and musical. Then more images appeared in the air. These new pictures showed the creature itself, but younger and accompanied by others of its kind. They were tending to vast machines that spanned entire star systems, guiding the development of primitive species, and maintaining what looked like a galactic civilization that made the current one look like children playing with toys. "It is showing us its past," Hyunwoo said quietly. "But where are the others? Where are the rest of its people?" As if in response to his question, the images changed again. Now they showed the other creatures ascending, transforming into something that was no longer physical. Beings of pure energy rising beyond the need for material form, leaving behind the galaxy they had nurtured for so long. But one stayed behind. The creature standing before Hyunwoo was the last of its kind. The final guardian left to watch over all the species the first makers had created. For millions of years it had wandered the galaxy alone, checking on civilizations, intervening when necessary, and searching for something that even it was not sure how to define. "You have been alone for so long," Hyunwoo said, and something in his voice made the creature's many eyes focus on him with sharp attention. That is why you are here. You are not just checking on us. You are looking for someone to talk to. Someone who can understand what you have been carrying all this time. The creature made a sound that might have been agreement or relief, or something between the two. Then the images changed once more, showing scenes that made Hyunwoo's heart race. These were pictures of the future, not distant possibilities, but events that would happen in the coming years and decades. Species that would face extinction if not guided properly. Wars that would consume entire star systems if the right words were not spoken at the right time. Technologies that would be discovered too early by civilizations, not ready to handle them responsibly. The burden of knowledge and responsibility that the creature had been carrying alone was vast beyond human comprehension. It was the guardian of galactic civilization itself, the hidden hand that kept countless species from destroying themselves or each other. Captain Tai Hyun-oh's voice joined the conversation from his security station. Hyunwoo, we are monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what happened here. Other stations and colonies are reporting similar encounters. This is not just about Nexus Prime. What do you mean? Bongsu asked. I mean there are other ships like this one appearing throughout human space, not attacking, just appearing and waiting, as if they are all connected to this creature somehow. The creature nodded when it heard this, then projected new images. These showed dozens of similar ships positioned near human colonies and stations throughout the galaxy. Each one waited patiently, not threatening but clearly present. They were all extensions of this guardian, parts of a network that spanned the stars. You have been testing us, Hyunwoo realized. Not just me, not just the humans on this station. You have been testing all of humanity at once. The creature's response was a complex series of sounds and images that told a story Hyunwoo was only beginning to understand. The first makers had created most of the current galactic species, guiding their evolution and development according to careful plans. But humanity had evolved independently on a distant world, without any guidance or intervention. This made humans something unique in the galaxy. They were not the children of the first makers. They were something genuinely new, a species that had developed its own path to intelligence and civilization. For the ancient guardian, this was both fascinating and potentially dangerous. Humans might be the next stage in galactic evolution, the species that could inherit the responsibility the first makers had abandoned, or they might be a wild element that would disrupt the careful balance the guardian had maintained for so long. The tests had been designed to find out which. And we passed, Hyunwoo said softly. When everyone else ran away in terror, we stayed. When the emergency happened, we worked together to fix it. We proved we could cooperate instead of just being afraid. Dr. Yoon Jong-yoon's voice joined the conversation from the medical bay, where she was treating affected aliens. Hyunwoo, I think there is more to it than that. I have been studying the biological readings from all the species on the station. The terror they experienced was not just fear of the unknown. It was genetic memory. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. Every species created by the first makers carries genetic programming that makes them recognize their creators. When they see this guardian, part of their DNA remembers being shaped and guided by its people. They experience the terror of children being judged by a parent they thought was gone forever. But humans do not have that programming, Taehyun added, understanding dawning in his voice. We never had creators to be afraid of disappointing. The creature made another sound, and this time Hyunwoo was certain it was approval. The images around them shifted to show human colonies and ships throughout the galaxy, all interacting peacefully with the mysterious vessels that had appeared near them. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Alien species fled or collapsed in terror, but humans remained calm and tried to communicate. Some offered help, others asked questions, but none responded with violence or panic. You needed to find a species that could stand beside you as equals instead of cowering as children, Hyunwoo said. That is what this has all been about. The creature projected one final set of images. These showed a possible future where humans and the ancient guardian worked together to guide galactic civilization. Not as masters and servants, but as partners in the vast task of keeping thousands of species safe and thriving. But the choice was not the creature's to make alone. It was showing Hyunwoo and all of humanity what could be. But the decision of whether to accept such responsibility would have to come from humans themselves. President Da-woon, Cha's voice suddenly joined the communication channel from Earth. This is being broadcast to every human world and station. The whole species is watching what happens next. Hyunwoo looked at the ancient creature, seeing not a monster or a god, but a being that had been alone for longer than human civilization had existed. It was offering to share a burden that was too great for any one entity to carry forever. The question was whether humanity was ready to help carry it. "We need to discuss this," Hyunwoo said carefully. "This is not a decision one person can make." The creature nodded understanding. It had waited millions of years already. It could wait a little longer for humanity to decide if they were ready to inherit the galaxy. Part 5, the test. The next 3 days changed everything. Hyunwoo thought he knew about reality. The creature, which Dr. Lee had started calling the Guardian in her reports, did not simply wait for humanity's decision. Instead, it began what could only be described as the most important examination in galactic history. But this was not a test of knowledge or strength. It was a test of character. The Guardian created scenarios throughout Nexus Prime using technology that seemed like magic to human observers. Holographic environments appeared in empty cargo bays, complete with realistic people and situations that demanded immediate decisions from whoever encountered them. Hyunwoo found himself in the first scenario when he entered what he thought was a normal maintenance area. Suddenly, he was standing on the bridge of a starship facing a choice between saving a human colony or an alien world. Both were under attack, both would die if not helped immediately, and there were only enough resources to save one. The simulation was so realistic that Hyunwoo's heart pounded as he worked through the problem. But instead of choosing one world over the other, he began looking for a third option. He studied the tactical displays, analyzed the attacking forces, and found a way to divide his resources so both worlds could survive, even though it meant taking greater risks. When the simulation ended, the Guardian was there watching him with those ancient eyes. It made a sound that Hyunwoo was beginning to recognize as approval. "You were testing whether I would sacrifice aliens to save humans," Hyunwoo said, "but that is not how we think. Life is life, no matter what species it comes from." Similar tests were happening throughout the station and across human space. Captain Tae-hyun faced a scenario where he had to choose between following orders and protecting innocent civilians. He chose the civilians. Engineer Bong-soo was presented with a damaged ship full of enemy soldiers who had been attacking human colonies. He chose to repair their ship and send them home rather than let them die in space. The pattern was always the same. Humans consistently chose compassion over convenience, cooperation over domination, and creative solutions over simple binary choices. But the Guardian's tests went deeper than individual decisions. It began showing humans visions of entire civilizations that would need guidance in the coming centuries. Species that would discover faster-than-light travel before they learned to control their aggressive instincts. Worlds that would face extinction from natural disasters unless someone helped them develop the right technologies at the right time. Dr. Yoon Jung-yoon spent hours in discussion with the Guardian, somehow managing to communicate through a combination of images, sounds, and gestures that was becoming almost like a language. She emerged from these sessions with disturbing reports. "It is not just about helping individual species," she told the assembled human staff. "The Guardian has been maintaining a balance across the entire galaxy for millions of years, preventing wars that would destroy entire star systems, guiding technological development so civilizations do not destroy themselves, ensuring that resources are distributed fairly between species." "How is that even possible?" asked Captain Kim. "The logistics alone would be impossible for anyone being to handle." "That is the point," Dr. Lee replied. "It is too much for one being. The Guardian has been slowly failing for the last 1,000 years. It is too old, too tired, and spread too thin. It needs help, and we are the only species in the galaxy that can provide it." The weight of what she was saying settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The Guardian was not just offering humanity a partnership. It was asking them to help save galactic civilization itself. Admiral Kyung-ho Seo's voice came through from the Colonial Fleet headquarters. "We have been analyzing the data from all the encounters across human space. The Guardian's ship network spans the entire galaxy. If it fails, there will be no one to prevent the wars and disasters it has been quietly stopping for millions of years." Hyunwoo thought about this as he returned to his normal duties. The Guardian followed him sometimes, observing how he approached routine maintenance tasks. It seemed particularly interested in how humans solved problems that had no obvious solutions. During one such observation, A group of Nexari merchants approached Hyunwoo cautiously. They had recovered enough from their initial terror to be curious about the human who could stand next to the ancient creature without fear. "How do you bear its presence?" asked Cricktail, the lead merchant. "When we look at it, we see the judgment of the creators. We see our failures and inadequacies laid bare." Hyunwoo considered this carefully. "When I look at it, I see someone who has been doing an impossible job alone for longer than any being should have to. I see someone who needs help." The Guardian made one of its musical sounds, and Hyunwoo was certain it was expressing gratitude. That night, President Da-Woon-cha called an emergency session of the Human Colonial Council. Representatives from every human world and station participated in the discussion. The debate lasted for hours, with some arguing that humanity was not ready for such responsibility, and others insisting that they could not turn away from a being that had protected the galaxy for so long. Finally, the vote was called. It was not even close. 97% of humanity voted to accept the Guardian's offer of partnership, but the Guardian had one more test. When the results of the vote were announced, the Guardian created its most complex scenario yet. It showed humanity a future where they had accepted the responsibility of galactic guardianship, but where that responsibility had corrupted them. Humans became the rulers of other species instead of their protectors, using their power to benefit themselves at the expense of others. "This is what you fear," Hyunwoo said to the Guardian. "You are afraid we will become like your creators, who abandoned their responsibilities when they grew tired of them." The Guardian's response was a wave of images showing the rise and fall of countless civilizations, all of which had started with good intentions but been corrupted by power over time. "But there is something you do not understand about humans," Hyunwoo continued. "We are not individuals when we face something this important. We are a species, and we hold each other accountable." To prove his point, Hyunwoo called up examples from human history. Democratic governments that prevented any one person from having too much power, oversight committees that monitored those in authority, whistleblowers who exposed corruption when they found it. "We have learned to guard against our own worst instincts," he explained. "If we accept this responsibility, it will not be as individuals who can be corrupted. It will be as a civilization that checks and balances itself." The Guardian considered this for a long moment. Then it projected one final image, a vision of the future where humans and the Guardian work together, but where humanity's natural tendency to question authority and demand accountability had created a system of galactic governance that was both effective and incorruptible. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, the Guardian's body language showed something that looked like hope. The test was over. Humanity had passed. Now came the hardest part, living up to the responsibility they had chosen to accept. The ceremony, if it could be called that, took place in the main cargo bay of Nexus Prime. The Guardian had transformed the space using its impossible technology, creating a chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Representatives from every human world were present, either in person or through quantum-linked communication devices. Hyunwoo stood at the center of it all, still wearing his maintenance coveralls, still holding his wrench. He had not asked to become humanity's representative in this moment, but somehow everyone had agreed that the simple mechanic who had stayed at his post when others fled was the right person to accept this cosmic inheritance. The Guardian began the process by sharing its memories directly with every human present. The experience was overwhelming. Hyunwoo felt the weight of millions of years of responsibility, the loneliness of being the last of one's kind, and the constant pressure of making decisions that affected entire civilizations. But he also felt something else. Relief. For the first time in countless centuries, the Guardian would not be alone. The knowledge transfer was not just memories. The Guardian was sharing the fundamental skills needed to sense the pulse of galactic civilization. Hyunwoo suddenly became aware of every inhabited world in the galaxy, every species struggling with problems that could destroy them, every conflict that threatened to spiral out of control. It should have been too much for any human mind to handle. But the Guardian had been careful. The knowledge was distributed among all of humanity, not concentrated in any one person. Every human would feel the connection to galactic civilization, but no individual would be overwhelmed by it. President Da-Woon-cha felt the birth of a new species on a distant world. Admiral Seo sensed a developing war between two civilizations. That could be prevented with the right intervention. Dr. Lee became aware of a plague spreading through an alien population that could be cured with technology humanity had developed decades ago. "We are all connected now," Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying to every human in the galaxy through the quantum link. "We can feel what the galaxy needs, and we have the knowledge to help provide it." But the Guardian was not finished. It began to change, its ancient body becoming less solid and more energy. The process was not death, but transformation. It was joining its creators at last, ascending to whatever existence they had found beyond the physical realm. As it changed, it spoke directly into the minds of every human alive. Not in words, but in concepts and emotions that transcended language: gratitude, relief, hope, and finally, trust. The Guardian trusted humanity to carry on its work. More than that, it believed humans would do it better than it had, because they would do it together instead of alone. When the transformation was complete, the Guardian was gone. But it had left behind something precious, a network of ships and technologies that would help humanity fulfill their new role. And most importantly, the knowledge of how to use them responsibly. Hyunwoo looked around at his fellow humans, all of them now changed by what they had experienced. They were still the same people they had been before, but they carried within them an awareness of their connection to every living being in the galaxy. "So what happens now?" asked Bong-Su, voicing the question everyone was thinking. "Now we go back to work," Hyunwoo replied. "But our work is bigger than it used to be." Over the following months, humanity began to adapt to their new role. It was not the dramatic change many had expected. Humans did not become rulers or conquerors. They became what they had always been: problem solvers and mechanics, but now on a galactic scale. When the Vorthon homeworld faced a crisis with their crystalline cities beginning to resonate destructively, human engineers worked with Vorthon scientists to develop harmonic dampeners that solved the problem. When two species near the galactic rim began fighting over resources, human diplomats helped them find uninhabited worlds with even richer deposits. The work was challenging and never-ending, but it was also deeply satisfying. Humans had found their place in the galaxy not as conquerors but as caregivers, using their natural creativity and stubbornness to solve problems that had seemed impossible. Hyunwoo remained on Nexus Prime, but his role expanded far beyond simple maintenance. He became the coordinator for human activities throughout the galaxy, the person other species contacted when they needed help but did not know where to turn. His office was still in the engineering section, still cluttered with tools and spare parts, but now it also contained communication equipment that could reach any world in the galaxy, and databases that contained the accumulated knowledge of millions of years of galactic civilization. One day, about a year after the Guardian's departure, Dr. Lee brought him a report that made him smile. "The psychological effects on alien species have completely disappeared," she said. "They no longer experience terror when they encounter the Guardian ships that are now under human control. Instead, they report feeling safe." "Good," Hyunwoo replied, looking up from a repair manual he was studying. "That means we are doing it right." The alien species throughout the galaxy were beginning to understand what had happened. The terrifying presence they had felt was not the Guardian itself, but their own genetic memory of being judged by their creators. Now that the Guardian had found worthy successors and was no longer alone, that crushing sense of judgment had been replaced by something warmer. The First Maker's children finally felt that their absent parents had sent someone to take care of them, and humanity had found its true purpose among the stars, not to conquer or rule, but to maintain and repair the vast machinery of galactic civilization, just as Hyunwoo had always maintained and repaired the systems that kept Nexus Prime running. Some jobs, it turned out, were too important to trust to anyone but the people willing to stay at their posts when everyone else ran away. The galaxy was in good hands. Late at night, when his shift was over and the station was quiet, Hyunwoo would sometimes look out at the stars and feel the gentle pulse of countless worlds full of living beings. All of them were part of his responsibility now, but he was not alone in carrying that weight. Across the galaxy, millions of other humans felt the same pulse and carried the same responsibility. They were mechanics and diplomats, scientists and teachers, all working together to keep the vast machine of galactic civilization running smoothly. It was the biggest repair job in history, and humanity was uniquely qualified to handle it. After all, they were the species that looked at impossible problems and found ways to fix them. They were the ones who stayed calm when others panicked, who worked together when cooperation seemed impossible, and who never gave up on finding a solution. The Guardian had chosen well, and somewhere in the space between dimensions, the transformed consciousness that had once been the last of the first makers watched over its successors with something that transcended gratitude. The galaxy was home to new Guardians now, Guardians who understood that the greatest power was not the ability to command, but the willingness to serve. The inheritance was complete.